Hello, we're here, we're back. We're a little late. I meant to read twice last week, it didn't happen. I'm gonna stop excusing myself. You know, life has just been getting in the way lately. It happens. I don't think anyone's as been out of shape about it as I am, really. But anyway, hello, we're back. I have a nice crisp beer, and I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'm gonna wait a minute and a half in case folks show up, and then then we'll get down to business. All right. See you soon. All right, let's get down to business. Just make sure everything's ready to go. And okay, here we are. The barbarian grunted agreement, and the companions began groping their way at random down the corridor. Even at that moment, something occurred to Murillo. "How did you recognize me in this blackness?" he demanded. "I smelled the perfume you put on your hair when you came to my cell," answered Conan. "I smelled it again a while ago when I was crouching in the dark and preparing to rip you open." Murillo put a lock of his black hair to his nostrils. Even so, the scent was barely apparent to his civilized senses, and he realized how keen must be the organs of the barbarian. Instinctively, his hand went to his scabbard as they groped onward, and he cursed to find it empty. At that moment, a faint glow became apparent ahead of them, and presently they came to a sharp bend in the corridor, about which the light filtered grayly. Together they peered around the corner, and Murillo, leaning against his companion, felt his huge frame stiffen. The young nobleman had also seen it, the body of a man, half naked, lying limply in the corridor beyond the bend, vaguely illumined by a radiance which seemed to emanate from a broad silver disc on the farther wall. A strange familiarity about the recumbent figure, which lay face down, stirred Murillo with inexplicable and monstrous conjectures. Motioning the Cimmerian to follow him, he stole forward and bent above the body. Overcoming a certain repugnance, he grasped it and turned it on its back. An incredulous oath escaped him. The Cimmerian grunted explosively. "Nabonidus! The Red Priest!" ejaculated Murillo, his brain a dizzy vortex of whirling amazement. "Then who... what?" The priest groaned and stirred. With cat-like reflexes, Conan bent over him, poniard poised above his heart. Murillo caught his wrist. "Wait! Don't kill him just yet." "Why not?" demanded the Cimmerian. "He has cast off his were-guise and sleeps. Will you awaken him to tear us to pieces?" "No, wait!" urged Murillo, trying to collect his jumbled wits. "Look, he is not sleeping. See that great blue welt on his shaven temple? He has been knocked senseless. He may have been lying here for hours." "I thought you swore you saw him in beastly shape in the house above," said Conan. "I did. Or else... Wait, he's coming to. Keep back your blade, Conan. There's a mystery here even darker than I thought. I must have words with this priest before we kill him." Nabonidus lifted a hand vaguely to his bruised temple, mumbled, and opened his eyes. For an instant they were blank and empty of intelligence. Then life came back to them with a jerk, and he sat up, staring at the companions. Whatever terrific jolt had temporarily addled his razor-keen brain, it was functioning with its accustomed vigor again. His eyes shot swiftly about him, then came back to rest on Murilo's face. "You honor my poor house, young sir," he laughed coolly, glancing at the great figure that loomed behind the young nobleman's shoulder. "You have brought a bravo, I see. Was your sword not sufficient to sever the life of my humble self?" "Enough of this," impatiently returned Murilo. "How long have you lain here?" "A peculiar question to put to a man just recovering consciousness," answered the priest. "I do not know what time it now is, but it lacked an hour or so of midnight when I was set upon." "Then who is it that masquerades in your own gown in the house above?" demanded Murilo. "Ah, that will be Thak," answered Nabonidus, ruefully fingering his bruises. "Yes, that will be Thak, and in my gown, the dog." Conan, who comprehended none of this, stirred restlessly and growled something in his own tongue. Nabonidus glanced at him whimsically. "Your bully's knife yearns for my heart, Murilo," he said. "I thought you might be wise enough to take my warning and leave the city." How was I to know that was to be granted me?" returned Murilo. "At any rate, my interests are here." "You are in good company with that cutthroat," murmured Nabonidus. "I had suspected you for some time. That was why I caused that pallid court secretary to disappear. Before he died, he told me many things, among others the name of the young nobleman who bribed him to filch state secrets, which the nobleman in turn sold to rival powers. Are you not ashamed of yourself, Murilo, you white-handed thief?" "I have no more cause for shame than you vulture-hearted plunderer," answered Murilo promptly. "You exploit a whole kingdom for your personal greed, and under the guise of disinterested statesmanship, you swindle the king, beggar the rich, oppress the poor, and sacrifice the whole future of the nation for your ruthless ambition. You are no more than a fat hog with his snout in the trough. You are a greater thief than I am, and this Cimmerian is the most honest man of the three of us, because he steals and murders openly." "Well, then, we are all rogues together," agreed Nabonidus equably. "And what now? My life?" "When I saw the ear of the secretary that had disappeared, I knew I was doomed," said Murilo abruptly. "And I believed you would invoke the authority of the king. Was I right?" "Quite so," answered the priest. "A court secretary is easy to do away with, but you are a bit too prominent. I had intended telling the king a jest about you in the morning." "Yes, a jest that would have cost me my head," muttered Murilo. "And then the king is unaware of my foreign enterprises." "As yet," sighed Nabonidus. "And now, since I see your companion has his knife, I fear that jest will never be told." "You should know how to get out of these rat dens," said Murilo. "Suppose I agree to spare your life. Will you help us to escape, and swear to keep silent about my thievery?" "Oh, when did a priest keep an oath?" complained Conan, comprehending the trend of the conversation. "Let me cut his throat. I want to see what color his blood is. They say in the maze that his heart is black, so his blood must be black too. Be quiet, whispered Murillo. If he does not show us the way out of these pits, we may rot here. Well, Nabonidus, what do you say? Well, what does a wolf say with his leg in the trap? Laughed the priest. I am in your power, and if we are to escape, we must aid one another. I swear, if we survive this adventure, to forget all your shifty dealings. I swear by the soul of Mitra. I am satisfied, muttered Murillo. Even the Red Priest would not break that oath. Now get out of here. Now to get out of here. My friend here entered by way of the tunnel, but a grill fell behind him and blocked the way. Can you cause it to be lifted? Not from these pits, answered the priest. The control lever is in the chamber above the tunnel. There is only one other way out of these pits, which I will show you. But tell me, how did you come here? Murillo told him in a few words, and Nabonidus nodded, rising stiffly. He limped down the corridor, which here widened into a sort of vast chamber, and approached the distant silver disk. As they advanced, the light increased, though it never became anything but a dim, shadowy radiance. Near the disk, they saw a narrow stair leading upward. That is the other exit, said Nabonidus, and I strongly doubt if the door at the head is bolted. But I have an idea that he who would go through that door had better cut his own throat first. Look into the disc. We have a page break here, so I'm going to take a short drink of water. Hang tight. What had seemed a silver plate was, in reality, a great mirror set in the wall. A confusing system of copper-like tubes jutted out from the wall above it, bending down toward it at right angles. Glancing into these tubes, Murillo saw a bewildering array of smaller mirrors. He turned his attention to the larger mirror in the wall and ejaculated in amazement. Peering over his shoulder, Conan grunted. They seemed to be looking through a broad window into a well-lighted chamber. There were broad mirrors on the walls, with velvet hangings between. There were silken couches, chairs of ebony and ivory, and curtained doorways leading off from the chamber. And before one doorway, which was not curtained, sat a bulky black object that contrasted grotesquely with the richness of the chamber. Murillo felt his blood freeze again as he looked at the horror which seemed to be staring directly into his eyes. Involuntarily, he recoiled from the mirror, while Conan thrust his head truculently forward till his jaws almost touched the surface, growling some threat or defiance in his own barbaric tongue. "In Mitra's name, Nabonidus!" gasped Murillo, shaken. "What is it?" "That is Thak," answered the priest, caressing his temple. "Some would call him an ape, but he is almost as different from a real ape as he is different from a real man. His people dwell far to the east, in the mountains that fringe the eastern frontiers of Zamora. There are not many of them, but if they are not exterminated, I believe they will become human beings, in perhaps 100,000 years. They are in the formative stage. They are neither apes, as their remote ancestors were, nor men, as their remote descendants may be. They dwell in the high crags of well-nigh inaccessible mountains, knowing nothing of fire, or the making of shelter, or garments, or the use of weapons. Yet they have a language of a sort, consisting mainly of grunts and clicks. I took Thak when he was a cub, and he learned what I taught him much more swiftly and thoroughly than any true animal could have done. He was at once bodyguard and servant, but I forgot that being partly a man, he could not be submerged into a mere shadow of myself like a true animal. Apparently, his semi-brain retained impressions of hate, resentment, and some sort of bestial ambition of its own. At any rate, he struck when I least expected it. Last night he appeared to go suddenly mad. His actions had all the appearance of bestial insanity, yet I know that they must have been the result of long and careful planning. I heard a sound of fighting in the garden, and going to investigate, for I believed it was yourself being dragged down by my watchdog, I saw Thak emerge from the shrubbery dripping with blood. Before I was aware of his intention, he sprang at me with an awful scream and struck me senseless. I remember no more, but can only surmise that, following some whim of his semi-human brain, he stripped me of my gown and cast me, still living, into the pits. For what reason, only the gods can guess. He must have killed the dog when he came from the garden, and after he struck me down, he evidently killed Yoka, as you saw the man lying dead in the house. Yoka would have come to my aid, even against Thak, whom he always hated. Murillo stared in the mirror at the creature which sat with such monstrous patience before the closed door. He shuddered at the sight of the great black hands, thickly grown with hair that was almost fur-like. The body was thick, broad, and stooped. The unnaturally wide shoulders had burst the scarlet gown, and on these shoulders Murillo noted that same thick growth of black hair. The face peering from the scarlet hood was utterly bestial, and yet Murillo realized that Nabonidus spoke the truth when he said that Thak was not wholly a beast. There was something in the red, murky eyes, something in the creature's clumsy posture, something in the whole appearance of the thing that set it apart from the truly animal. That monstrous body housed a brain and soul that were just budding awfully into something vaguely human. Murillo stood aghast as he recognized a faint and hideous kinship between his kind and that squatting monstrosity, and he was nauseated by a fleeting realization of the abysses of bellowing bestiality up through which humanity had painfully toiled. "Surely he sees us," muttered Conan. "Why does he not charge us? He could break this window with ease." Murillo realized that Conan supposed the mirror to be a window through which they were looking. "He does not see us," answered the priest. "We are looking into the chamber above us. That door that Thak is guarding is the one at the head of these stairs. It is simply an arrangement of mirrors. Do you see those mirrors on the walls? They transmit the reflection of the room into these tubes, down which other mirrors carry it to reflect it at last on an enlarged scale in this great mirror." Murillo realized that the priest must be centuries ahead of his generation to perfect such an invention, but Conan put it down to witchcraft and troubled his head no more about it. "I constructed these pits for a place of refuge, as well as a dungeon," the priest was saying. "There are times when I have taken refuge here, and through these mirrors watched doom fall upon those who sought me with ill intent." "But why is Thak watching that door?" demanded Murillo. Well, he must have heard the falling of the grating in the tunnel. It is connected with bells in the chambers above. He knows someone is in the pits, and he is waiting for him to come up the stairs. Oh, he has learned well the lessons I taught him. He has seen what happens to men who come through that door when I tugged at the rope which hangs on yonder wall, and he waits to mimic me." "And while he waits, what are we to do?" demanded Murillo. "There is naught we can do, except watch him. As long as he is in that chamber, we dare not ascend the stairs. He has the strength of a true gorilla, and could easily tear us all to pieces. But he does not need to exert his muscles. If we open that door, he has but to tug the rope, and blast us into eternity." "How?" "I bargained to help you escape," answered the priest, "not to betray my secrets." Murillo started to reply, then stiffened suddenly. A stealthy hand had parted the curtains of one of the doorways. Between them appeared a dark face whose glittering eyes fixed menacingly on the squat form in the scarlet robe. "Petrius!" hissed Nabonidus. "Mitra, what a gathering of vultures this night is!" The face remained framed between the parted curtains. Over the intruder's shoulders, other faces peered, dark, thin faces, alight with sinister eagerness. "What do they here?" muttered Murillo, unconsciously lowering his voice, although he knew they could not hear him. Why, what would Petrius and his ardent young nationalists be doing in the house of the Red Priest? Laughed Nabonidus. And look how eagerly they glare at the figure they think is their arch-enemy. They have fallen into your error. It should be amusing to watch their expressions when they are disillusioned. Murillo did not reply. The whole affair had a distinctly unreal atmosphere. He felt as if he were watching the play of puppets, or as if a disembodied ghost as a disembodied ghost himself impersonally viewing the actions of the living, his presence unseen and unsuspected. He saw Petrius put his finger warningly to his lips and nod to his fellow conspirators. The young nobleman could not tell if Thak were aware of the intruders. The ape-man's position had not changed as he sat with his back toward the door through which the men were gliding. They had the same idea you had, Nabonidus was muttering at his ear. Only their reasons were patriotic rather than selfish. Easy to gain access to my house now that the dog is dead. Ho ho, what a chance to rid myself of their menace once and for all. If I were sitting where Thak sits, a leap to the wall, a tug on that rope. Petrius had placed one foot lightly over the threshold of the chamber. His fellows were at his heels, their daggers glinting dully. Suddenly, Thak rose and wheeled toward them. The unexpected horror of his appearance, where they had thought to behold the hated but familiar countenance of Nabonidus, wrought havoc with their nerves, as the same spectacle had wrought upon Murillo. With a shriek, Petrius recoiled, carrying his companions backward with him. They stumbled and floundered over each other, and in that instant Thak, covering the distance in one prodigious, grotesque leap, caught and jerked powerfully at a thick velvet rope which hung near the doorway. Instantly, the curtains whipped back on either hand, leaving the door clear, and down across it something flashed with a peculiar silvery blur. He remembered! Nabonidus was exulting. The beast is half a man. He had seen the doom performed, and he remembered. Watch now! Watch! Watch! Murillo saw that it was a panel of heavy glass that had fallen across the doorway. Through it he saw the pallid faces of the conspirators. Petrius, throwing out his hands as if to ward off a charge from Thak, encountered the transparent barrier, and from his gestures said something to his companions. Now that the curtains were drawn back, the men in the pits could see all that took place in the chamber that contained the nationalists. Completely unnerved, these ran across the chamber toward the door by which they had apparently entered, only to halt suddenly, as if stopped again by an invisible wall. The jerk of the rope sealed that chamber, laughed Nabonidus. It is simple. The glass panels work in grooves in the doorways. Jerking the rope trips the spring that holds them. They slide down and lock in place and can only be worked from outside. The glass is unbreakable. A man with a mallet could not shatter it. Ah! The trapped men were in a hysteria of fright. They ran wildly from one door to another, beating vainly at the crystal walls, shaking their fists wildly at the implacable black shape which squatted outside. Then one threw back his head, glared upward, and began to scream, to judge from the working of his lips while he pointed toward the ceiling. The fall of the panels released the clouds of doom, said the Red Priest with a wild laugh. The dust of the Grey Lotus from the swamps of the dead beyond the land of Kitai. In the middle of the ceiling hung a cluster of gold buds. These had opened like the petals of a great carven rose, and from them billowed a gray mist that swiftly filled the chamber. Instantly, the scene changed from one of hysteria to one of madness and horror. The trapped men began to stagger. They ran in drunken circles. Froth dripped from their lips, which twisted as in awful laughter. Raging, they fell upon one another with daggers and teeth, slashing, tearing, slaying in a holocaust of madness. Murillo turned sick as he watched, and was glad that he could not hear the screams and howls with which that doomed chamber must be ringing. Like pictures thrown on a screen, it was silent. Outside the chamber of horror, Thak was leaping up and down in brutish glee, tossing his long, hairy arms on high. At Mirilo's shoulder, Nabonidus was laughing like a fiend. "Ha ha ha! A good stroke, Petrius. That fairly disemboweled him. Now one for you, my patriotic friend." So they were all down, and the living tear the flesh of the dead with their slavering teeth. Mirilo shuddered. Behind him, the Cimmerian swore softly in his uncouth tongue. Only death was to be seen in the chamber of the grey mist. Torn, gashed, and mangled, the conspirators lay in a red heap, gaping mouths and blood-dabbled faces staring blankly upward through the slowly swirling eddies of grey. Thak, stooping like a giant gnome, approached the wall where the rope hung and gave it a peculiar sidewise pull. "He is opening the farther door," said Nabonidus. "By Mitra, he is more of a human than even I had guessed. See, the mist swirls out of the chamber and is dissipated. He waits to be safe. Now he raises the other panel. He is cautious. He knows the doom of the Grey Lotus, which brings madness and death. By Mitra!" Murilo jerked about at the electric quality of the exclamation. One chance!" exclaimed Nabonidus. "If he leaves the chamber above for a few minutes, we will risk a dash up those stairs." Suddenly tense, they watched the monster waddle through the doorway and vanish. With the lifting of the glass panel, the curtains had fallen again, hiding the chamber of death. "We must chance it!" gasped Nabonidus, and Murilo saw perspiration break out on his face. "Perhaps he will be disposing of the bodies as he has seen me do. Quick, follow me up these stairs." He ran toward the steps and up them with an agility that amazed Murilo. The young nobleman and the barbarian were close at his heels, and they heard his gusty sigh of relief as he threw open the door at the top of the stairs. They burst into the broad chamber they had seen mirrored below. Thak was nowhere to be seen. "He's in that chamber with the corpses!" exclaimed Murilo. "Why not trap him there as he trapped them?" "No, no!" gasped Nabonidus, an unaccustomed pallor tinging his features. "We do not know that he is in there. He might emerge before we could reach the trap rope anyway. Follow me into this corridor. I must reach my chamber and obtain weapons which will destroy him. This corridor is the only one opening from this chamber which is not set with a trap of some kind." They followed him swiftly through a curtained doorway opposite the door of the death chamber and came into a corridor into which various chambers opened. With fumbling haste, Nabonidus began to try the doors on each side. They were locked, as was the door at the other end of the corridor. "My God!" The red priest leaned against the wall, his skin ashen. "The doors are locked, and Thak took my keys from me. We are trapped after all." Murilo stared, appalled to see the man in such a state of nerves, and Nabonidus pulled himself together with an effort. "That beast has me in a panic," he said. "If you had seen him tear men as I have seen. Well, Mitra aid us, but we must fight him now with what the gods have given us. Come." He led them back to the curtained doorway and peered into the great chamber in time to see Thak emerge from the opposite doorway. It was apparent that the beast man had suspected something. His small, close-set ears twitched. He glared angrily about him, and approaching the nearest doorway, tore aside the curtains to look behind them. Nabonidus drew back, shaking like a leaf. He gripped Conan's shoulder. "Man, do you dare pitch your knife against his fangs?" The Cimmerian's eyes blazed in answer. "Quick!" the red priest whispered, thrusting him behind the curtains, close against the wall. "As he will find us soon enough, we will draw him to us. As he rushes past you, sink your blade in his back if you can. You, Murilo, show yourself to him, then flee up the corridor. Mitra knows we have no chance with him in hand-to-hand combat, but we are doomed anyway when he finds us." Murilo felt his blood congeal in his veins, but he steeled himself and stepped outside the doorway. Instantly, Thak, on the other side of the chamber, wheeled, glared, and charged with a thunderous roar. His scarlet hood had fallen back, revealing his black, misshapen head. His black hands and red robe were splashed with a brighter red. He was like a crimson and black nightmare as he rushed across the chamber, fangs bared, his bowed legs hurtling his enormous body along at a terrifying gait. Murilo turned and ran back into the corridor, and quick as he was, the shaggy horror was almost at his heels. Then, as the monster rushed past the curtains, from among them catapulted a great form that struck full on the ape-man's shoulders, at the same instant driving the poignard into the brutish back. Thak screamed horribly as the impact knocked him off his feet, and the combatants hit the floor together. Instantly there began a whirl and thrash of limbs, the tearing and rending of a fiendish battle. Murilo saw that the barbarian had locked his legs about the ape-man's torso and was striving to maintain his position on the monster's back while he butchered it with his poignard. Thak, on the other hand, was striving to dislodge his clinging foe, to drag him around within reach of the giant fangs that gaped for his flesh. In a whirlwind of blows and scarlet tatters, they rolled along the corridor, revolving so swiftly that Murilo dared not use the chair he had caught up, lest he strike the Cimmerian. And he saw that in spite of the handicap of Conan's first hold and the voluminous robe that lashed and wrapped about the ape-man's limbs and body, Thak's giant strength was swiftly prevailing. Inexorably, he was dragging the Cimmerian around in front of him. The ape-man had taken punishment enough to have killed a dozen men. Conan's poignard had sunk again and again into his torso, shoulders, and bow-like neck. He was streaming blood from a score of wounds, but unless the blade quickly reached some absolutely vital spot, Thak's inhuman vitality would survive to finish the Cimmerian, and after him, Conan's companions. Conan was fighting like a wild beast himself, in silence except for his gasps of effort. The black talons of the monster and the awful grasp of those misshapen hands ripped and tore at him, and the grinning jaws gaped for his throat. Then Murilo, seeing an opening, sprang and swung the chair with all his power, and with force enough to have brained a human being. The chair glanced from Thak's slanted black skull, but the stunned monster momentarily relaxed his rending grasp, and in that instant Conan, gasping and streaming blood, plunged forward and sank his poignard to the hilt in the ape-man's heart. With a convulsive shudder, the beast-man started from the floor, then sank limply back. His fierce eyes set and glazed, his thick limbs quivered and became rigid. Conan staggered dizzily up, shaking the sweat and blood out of his eyes. Blood dripped from his poignard and fingers and trickled in rivulets down his thighs, arms, and breast. Murilo caught at him to support him, but the barbarian shook him off impatiently. "When I cannot stand alone, it will be time to die," he mumbled through mashed lips. "But I'd like a flagon of wine." Nabonidus was staring down at the still figure as if he could not believe his own eyes. Black, hairy, aberrant, the monster lay, grotesque in the tatters of the scarlet robe, yet more human than bestial, even so, and possessed somehow of a vague and terrible pathos. Even the Cimmerian sensed this, for he panted, "I have slain a man tonight, not a beast. I will count him among the chiefs whose souls I've sent into the dark, and my women will sing of him." Nabonidus stooped and picked up a bunch of keys on a golden chain. They had fallen from the ape-man's girdle during the battle. Motioning his companions to follow him, he led them to a chamber, unlocked the door, and led the way inside. It was illumined like the others. The Red Priest took a vessel of wine from a table and filled crystal beakers. As his companions drank thirstily, he murmured, "What a night! It is nearly dawn now. What of you, my friends?" "I'll dress Conan's hurts, if you will fetch me bandages and the like," said Murilo, and Nabonidus nodded and moved toward the door that led into the corridor. Something about his bowed head caused Murilo to watch him sharply. At the door, the Red Priest wheeled suddenly. His face had undergone a transformation. His eyes gleamed with his old fire. His lips laughed soundlessly. "Rogues together," his voice rang with its accustomed mockery, "but not fools together. You are the fool, Murillo." "What do you mean?" The young nobleman started forward. "Back!" Nabonidus' voice cracked like a whip. "Another step and I will blast you." Murillo's blood turned cold as he saw that the Red Priest's hand grasped a thick velvet rope which hung among the curtains just outside the door. "What treachery is this?" cried Murillo. "You swore—" "I swore I would not tell the king a jest concerning you. I did not swear not to take matters into my own hands if I could. Do you think I would pass up such an opportunity? Under ordinary circumstances, I would not dare to kill you myself without the sanction of the king, but now none will ever know. You will go into the acid vats, along with Thack and the nationalist fools, and none will be the wiser. What a night this has been for me. If I have lost some valuable servants, I have nevertheless rid myself of various dangerous enemies. Stand back! I am over the threshold, and you cannot possibly reach me before I tug this cord and send you to hell. Not the Grey Lotus this time, but something just as effective. Nearly every chamber in my house is a trap, and so, Murillo, fool that you are—" Too quickly for the sight to follow, Conan caught up a stool and hurled it. Nabonidus instinctively threw up his arm with a cry, but not in time. The missile crunched against his head, and the Red Priest swayed and fell face down in a slowly widening dark pool of crimson. "Well, his blood was red after all," grunted Conan. Murillo raked back his sweat-plastered hair with a shaky hand as he leaned against the table, weak from the reaction of relief. "It is dawn," he said. "Let us get out of here before we all fall afoul of some other doom. If we can climb the outer wall without being seen, we won't be connected with this night's work. Let the police write their own explanation." He glanced at the body of the Red Priest where it lay etched in crimson and shrugged his shoulders. He was the fool after all. Had he not paused to taunt us, he could have trapped us easily. "Well," said the Cimmerian tranquilly, "he's traveled the road all rogues must walk at last. I'd like to loot the house, but I suppose we'd best go." As they emerged into the dimness of the dawn-whitened garden, Murillo said, "The Red Priest has gone into the dark, so my road is clear in the city, and I have nothing to fear. But what of you? There is still the matter of that priest in the maze, and—" "I'm tired of this city anyway," grinned the Cimmerian. "You mentioned a horse waiting at the rat's den. I'm curious to see how fast that horse can carry me into another kingdom. There's many a highway I want to travel before I walk the road Nabonidus walked this night." All right, that's the end of the tale. I am a little bit unsure what I want to read next. It's a toss-up between another Conan story, an H.P. Lovecraft story, or maybe digging into some Jules Verne, or finally, there is, I believe, a single Jack Vance book in the public domain called Shambak, or something similar. It's Sjambak, if I'm not mistaken. I've read it once many years ago, a long time ago, so I don't even really remember it that well. And I might give it a read between now and Friday and find some time to, I don't know, read it out loud on YouTube. So keep your eyes peeled, yeah, I don't know. I'll make a decision and I'll let folks know. In the meantime, thanks for hanging, as always. Thanks for listening. Show Aindulmedir some love. You can find him on Spotify, Bandcamp, or YouTube. If you have any suggestions for public domain, sci-fi, fantasy, sword and sorcery kind of stuff that you might like to hear some of, shoot me an email or leave a comment. You can email me at the same username at gmail.com. And yeah, thanks for hanging. Hope you have a great week, and you'll hear from me, Thursday or Friday, let's say. And I'm going to do it this time, damn it. All right, I will see you folks there. Take it easy.